Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. My name is Larry Sashin, and we have an incredible group, an incredibly controversial topic today. But before we go into it, why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves? Peter, why don't you say hello? Unmute your mic, Peter.
He's on mute.
All right. My name is Peter Gordon, and I am the president of New York Financial Organizers. We're called Daily Money Managers. We help people pay their bills and deal with insurance claims and all the non-investment side of finance.
Thank you. Now, Peter is not part of food service. Peter is here as a frequent diner. All right. And Russell.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Russell Jackson. I'm the chef, owner, operator of Reverence in Harlem. We're the only African-American chef-owned fine dining restaurant in over 30 years in New York, and Michelin nominated tasting menu program. I am a professional of over 40 years, and what the panel may not know, I am actually a board member for One Fair Wage, which is an advocacy group started after 9/11 to help create better wages and better conditions for hospitality workers.
Okay, Fred.
Good morning. I'm Fred Clashman. I'm the editor and publisher of Total Food Service. I find this subject absolutely fascinating. Looking forward to a great session.
All right. And I am Larry Sashin once again, and today's topic is tipping, the elephant in the dining room. We were just talking and had mentioned that you cannot spend a day without hearing about a wage dispute, a tipping dispute, how restaurants are run. It is becoming more and more into the forefront because there's just so many things going, so many dynamics working against each other. Now, yes, everyone deserves a right to earn a living, a fair living wage. The question is, it's on the back of diners. And diners who have seen, a $12 hamburger become $20. They have seen fast and efficient service become spotty, and now they're asked to pay more. So how do we balance something like that? Russell, you mentioned one fair wage. Why don't you tell people what one fair wage is, and let's get this ball rolling?
Well, again, there's a historic element to one fair wage, and I'm not necessarily here as a representative of one fair wage, but I am because I walk and talk and breathe.
Oh, besides that, hold on one second, Russell. In your conversation here, in your talk, I want you to tell people the origins of our system of tipping and such.
So tipping actually goes all the way back to slavery, in the respect that during, I believe it was the Civil War, and just post-Civil War, white men were primarily servers in restaurants and in roadhouses, and ultimately they all went off to war as slaves then became, and/or when people of color and women primarily became the workforce, and white men were asking for more money at the time to make a living wage. More women and people of color started to become the labor force since they were cheaper labor. In turn, that those people were given what was in Europe at the time, the program for compensating hospitality workers, which was tipping. that in itself became the standard in the US, and that's how, again, we've led all of these years. Tipping has not changed primarily in all of those years, and we are now in this position where it exists in the form that it does. We're dealing with, and I think that what people don't, we started to allude to this before we started, that there are core issues and values that are broken. If we think about the fact that the pandemic was sort of this great dividing line of pulling back the curtain for what is and has always been a highly broken system, the restaurant industry, that it's been very small margins, that a lot of the larger high profile restaurants that have gone out and had some level of success have been all built on free labor or low pay labor elements. You're now dealing with a situation where that most people, we had a massive exodus of people. I mean, we're living through a perfect storm. People left the industry. People don't want to return to the industry. There's been high level of abuse and anger in dealing with and putting workers on the front line in not only trying to service and take care of people, but then dealing with the hostility and having to enforce laws that they didn't help to create in the regards of wearing masks or socially distancing. I mean, there was a year there where every day we heard some form of a story about somebody getting shot, punched, murdered because they asked somebody to wear a mask or not to come into their space. And you're seeing the repercussions of a broken system, of a bad business model that should have never existed, customer expectations that are grandiose, that have been conditioned into thinking, well, this is the way that it should be. So you're dealing with a lot of issues here that are really, really difficult. And tipping is just one small part of the equation of the greater problem that exists. And again, at its basis, the laws that are set up across the country, there's no guidance, there's no level of support for it. We as restaurateurs and as business people are trying to figure out how to create a better system, and those choices that we have to make are limited, and the limitations are in gray areas, which in turn push up against the laws and up against people's expectations. So and because we're making choices where we don't talk about them, we just do them. And sometimes your staff doesn't understand that, or your customers don't understand the choices that you're having to make for your business. There's a massive pushback, and there's a lot of anger about it because you've changed something. So, but the sad part is it's reality. The change is occurring. The change is going to happen, and we're never going back to the way it was before. So people just have to get used to. People have to get used to the fact that we're floundering right now to help to try to create a level of change. I mean, okay. It's a dog pile. You had restaurants that suffered, and everybody begged and begged and begged for assistance and help. We got this amount of help when we needed this amount of help, and now everybody's again scratching for survival, and so many didn't survive, and those that were lucky enough, smart enough, or willing to go into debt enough to continue on should be praised and lauded for the fact that they still exist.
Okay, good. I understand everything you just said,
Yeah.
But Peter, unmute. Okay, Peter, here's the other side of the coin. Okay. Everything's more expensive. Everybody needs more money to work, except a business owner who was also, I won't use the word floundering, but scratching for money because nobody has money to do the essential things. So, Peter, what is your view on this?
Um, well, my view really isn't as a business owner, even though I am a business owner. It's more as a consumer, but also as a citizen. And I'll give you an example. It's related to tipping, but it's, as Russell said, I'm really interested in that organization about a fair living wage. I was coming home from the Adirondacks this weekend. We stopped at a service area, and they had redone it, so there was only a Popeyes, a Starbucks, and a store.
Fine dining.
Yeah, which is okay. Yeah, I mean, it is to be what, you know, if you could get up to the line. It was at least a half an hour wait. At least a half hour wait. I was waiting for like 5 minutes on the Starbucks line, and there were 2 people working, and there were, you know, dozens of people online. And to me, you know, I got out and I said to my wife, I said, why don't they just double these people's pay? You know, because the problem is they don't have enough workers, and they don't pay the workers enough. And the mindset is such that we don't have to pay them more. They'll, you know, if they perform well, they'll do better on tips. And I don't even know if that's necessarily the mindset, but it all comes down to a fair living wage. And it's
Yeah, but hold on a second. Hold on, Peter. Hold on. Okay. That's all well and good. But at some point, when does this turn into the story of the toll booth worker? In other words, there's enough technology and enough automation, and I can respect the fact of what hospitality and face-to-face means. But when it comes to stopping for a cup of coffee, I'm not sure that I need to see a happy face. And that as an operator, I'd be a hell of a lot happier making sure that I'm able to fulfill the transaction that I'm trying to fulfill. So let's as we look at this, let's have a little vision as well.
But that's the point. There weren't enough unhappy faces. You know, all the unhappy faces were on the other side of the counter.
Right.
Most of them, there were 2 people working.
Yeah.
And why is
they
that?
were banging to get it done too.
Oh, they couldn't get anything done. You know, they had a drive-through, and they couldn't keep the drive-through open because they probably didn't have the personnel. So it's a complicated question. And Fred, though, as you point out, you know, eventually we're not going to need people to do this. Well, then how do you support a society if people aren't making a wage?
Well, and again, you have to think about the fact that the entire system is under attack. You've got, and I'm not to drag politics into it, but think about the fact that workers, people of color and women who are the predominant workforce in the greatest numbers within the industry are under constant attack. You've got not only have you got health issues, you've got pay issues, you've got immigration issues. You've got, you know, like, how would you like to be the barista who spent a year trying to get out of a country that was trying to kill them into another country that's now trying to kill them, to become a barista, to get slightly paid under the top table in Florida, and now is too fearful to leave the house because they're going to get swept up, and their boss is too afraid to pay them because they'll get swept up now. You know, again, so then when you look at it, you walk into a Starbucks, and there's 2 people that a team of 10 should actually be working. So again, like we're not to say that we're off topic, but this is part of the conundrum.
It's very much on topic.
Exactly. It's
very much on topic.
This is where we're at. So you know, it's like, in full transparent. So again, in One Fair Wage, we believe in a living wage plus gratuity tips on top.
Yep.
my restaurant has a level of consistency and inconsistency, and we had a lot of difficulties during the pandemic in trying to sort of figure out the Rubik's cube of life in how to put out a product, take care of our community, support our industry, support ourselves through all of it, all while hoping that, you know, the people that said they were going to be there for us in the end that weren't. So I ended up saying, okay, fine. I would rather pay a living wage, a little extra, to give my workers a weekly consistency, to have an understanding of like, okay, if you work 10 hours, you know how much money you're going to make, not based on whether or not we have 10 customers or 100 customers. And that for the time being, here's where we're at. So I pay a much higher per hour to make sure that my people have coverage than to deal with and eliminated tips and wage or tips within our restaurant. So people can come in and they can say, oh, I want to kick in some more money. Great. Here's a Venmo, click on that. You can pay it. I'll divvy it up amongst the entire crew. We've also we also built an efficient restaurant where we don't have waiters, we don't have dishwashers, we have one team. We have one team like a special forces SEAL team that goes in and does the job, and we get out.
One second here. And through speaking to Russell and to other restaurateurs while we were putting this together, I have found that everybody says, well, just give them a raise. But it's not really, how it works right now in restaurants. And please stop me if I'm wrong, that the waiters are making the money.
That's always been the case.
It's the back of the house that's getting slammed.
Yeah.
Because they're the invisible people. They're not the ones you're tipping. You think it's sort of like instant food. The waiter puts in a ticket and out comes food. And how does it get there?
Right.
How does it get there? So I understand that, it's a problem where you would love to have the waiters still working like crazy for their tips, but somehow you have to funnel money to the back of the house. And that is where government is stepping in and saying, well, you can't do that. It's a one system thing, when really you have two different businesses in your business. Now, please, Sterling, pipe in if you have something to say about that, because you wrote me a bunch to say about that. So what's your opinion on this? Now, Sterling, I've known Sterling for 25, 30 years. I used to go to his restaurant. He just recently left the Russian tea room to open his own business. So Sterling, tell us about your opinion on this.
Mr.
You're breaking up.
Can you
Sterling.
hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I think this has been a great topic so far. I mean, I think a lot of it's spot on, and I think, I'm almost thinking, do we accept lower standards? And I don't mean it to insult, but like when we see all these problems coming up, and this is what the new norm is. So is this going to be the new norm going forward, or how do we fix this problem? I think that's the bigger question there. As we see, like you were saying, there's only 2 people at the Starbucks working when there should be 10. But this seems to be the new standard everywhere. I mean, every time I go out to eat, the service has gone down and down and down. Yet I'm in the business for 30 years. Like you said, I don't feel that I should necessarily pay people less, because I know what they're going through. I know the struggle. I know how they, have what they have to deal with. So I'm still inclined to give them that great tip. But then the question is, what do we do in the meantime? Do we accept this lower standard of service and tipping? Is that the new norm, or is how, like you said, a lot of people have exited, a lot of people have gone out of the business. So.
Okay. Well, I don't know. As a consumer, I'm already paying higher menu costs. I still tip people.
Yeah.
Yet when I need something, sometimes you have to stand up and wave. And it's, you know, I'm old. I'm old. I remember when service was service. I
Yeah.
remember sitting in luchos as a kid and having people in, all dressed and serving us.
Sure.
That is gone in most places you go. I
Yeah.
am sure that is there in Russell's establishment. I know and when we used to go to your place, it was there. The
Yeah.
service was there. Um, what's the happy medium? How do we fix this broken house? Especially, how do we get money to the dishwasher, to the line cooks, to the runners? How do we get money to them without adding another 15-20% to the menu?
Again, I think that we're looking at systemic change, and again, I think that the the government was smart. They would impanel a group of independent and corporate businesses, and I'm throwing corporate businesses in there, but we all know where they're going to go. But they would talk to a group like the IRC. And again, full transparency, I'm a former advisor for the IRC, the Independent Restaurant Coalition, that got the massive check that should have been 3 times the size for the US for restaurants that were dying. That they sit down with them and they say, okay, how do we do this better? What laws could we put in place to help you to retain staff, to pay a fair living wage so that it's equal and equitable across the board? Because the changes are minute. The simple fact that we have a law that exists within New York that Cuomo signed into existence for bellhops and for hotels and for maid services and for massages, and created a law that said, okay, you can distribute tips in a different way, and you can that they're set up in a proper way. But he carved out restaurants. This law has been sitting on the books, and it would take the stroke of a pen to make it right. But because of the influence of the National Restaurant Association and the GOP, they keep tamping down. And I mean, here in New York, the New York Hospitality Alliance, the right wing, keep pressuring and lobbying to have this law kept out. Now, you have to realize that the National Restaurant Association, I mean, again, I hope you've heard about this, but the National Restaurant Association has a certification program that is law in many states, where you have to get one of these silly certificates by going through their online course, and you pay to get this certificate. Where does all that money go that they're co-opting off of the poor dishwasher and the that have to have this certificate to get a job? That money, wholesale, full send, goes to the lobbyist, and the lobbyist go to Washington and tell the representatives, we don't want to change these laws. We don't want this put into place. We don't want to have to pay a fair wage. We want tip credits to be the law so that you can pay a sub-minimum wage to workers in lieu of the fact that they may get a percentage of tips. So the sub-minimum wage in some states is $2.70. Here in New York, I think it's like $7 or $8 an hour. So just think, like, you think you're working for $15.50 or $14 an hour, $12 an hour, and you look at your check and you're actually getting $6 an hour. And you're lucky if you crapshoot your way into getting a tip that you have to be abused for. Where's the justification in all of that? Please.
I got it. Sterling, why don't you verbalize what you just texted?
Sure. So as I'm thinking about this whole thing, at least I've heard that there's been some a lot of complaint about people actually putting the tip for the back of the house on the check. So what about just putting a suggestion there that they could leave it versus actually saying, you know, putting the tip line and saying back of the house tip, just put it as a mere suggestion. So I think if I'm going out and I see it and I realize, hey, like these guys are real artisans, I really want to take care of them, then I can say, hey, you know, I want to add that gratuity for the back of the house. Although it becomes an issue that the restaurant, if you're just going to, you know, the local diner, you may not give the tip for the back of the house guy, but at least you're giving a suggestion for people to start thinking about it. And maybe that would help create that extra tip for the people who do a lot of the work behind the scenes.
Segregation is never, I mean, not to say that I'm willing to try anything. I mean, I'm willing to try anything, but I don't necessarily think segregation is a road to, because then again, you're starting to create the haves and the have-nots. You know, the reality is, and again, as restaurateurs, I think we all realize we are one big team. We're one big group of people doing the same job to affect a goal. And that's where you have to have people, again, Amanda Cohen, who is a part of IRC, who owns Dirty Candy. She's a top vegetarian chef, former Iron Chef from Canada, a brilliant woman. She wrote an article that was in the New York Times about the cost of what it, you know, people were complaining about, well, why does this avocado toast cost me $20? And she broke it down. And lots of people don't realize all of those different things that go into the cost profile of getting that avocado toast to you on your table. You know, thinking about the fact that, again, that one server, that one cook, that sous chef, that all the 10 people that are in the chain that put that one piece of avocado toast in front of you, all of them have to get paid out. All of them have to do the work. All of, you know, it's like people don't understand the math behind this. And that's why again, systemic, that's why the failure rate has been so high in this industry, because lots of people think, oh, I can do that.
Yeah. But, you know, it's a perception thing also. Go ahead, Fred.
But maybe it's time to look at either using sous vide or working in a commissary or whatever. I mean, maybe that's the reality of where we are.
We're all doing it. We're
okay.
all, again, as a restaurateur, I'm telling you, we all look at and are constantly thinking about how to change for the better. You know, this is why a restaurant like Noma decided we're done, because we can't pay our staff what they're worth anymore.
You know, maybe it's one of the problems. We keep talking about the problem in the restaurant. Problem with the restaurant. It's the restaurateurs and it's the producers and everybody on that chain that is screwing things up. If you've ever if you've ever been to Europe and have gone into a grocery store in Europe, okay, their regular prices are what we pay now in a supermarket. Their prices of everything is higher. Everything is higher. We're used to cheap food, cheap meals, cheap this, cheap that.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you folks, but cheap is gone. You can't leave McDonald's without spending, a family of four, spending $60, $70 at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it's time for a reality check that, you know, I used to laugh when my father used to say to me, I remember paying a nickel for a cup of coffee. And I go, Dad, it's not a nickel anymore. You know, I'm now my dad.
The automat.
The automat. Yes, the automat. The automat went out of business because now you had to get a sack of quarters the size of a briefcase to get a sandwich. So that's, you know, times have changed. Maybe there's got to be a program to re-educate the consumer.
Yep.
Yvonne, I see you in the background over there.
He pulled his head.
Yvonne, speak up. Let's hear from you.
You're on mute.
I'm not muted.
Yeah,
Can you hear
good.
me?
There
Yeah,
he
now-
is.
All right, cool. Good morning, everyone.
Morning,
So
Yvonne.
what
Morning,
do you
soon to be
do?
daddy.
Yeah. So what do you do in your place, in your establishment in Forest Hills to make things fair and equitable?
We just pay everybody a solid wage. You know, because again, we're just events for now, but this is a question that we're gonna have to, move forward in when we open as a restaurant. But for now, we're lucky enough that we can pay somebody. You know, we pay our staff $25 an hour for their job, basically. You know, they send everyone front of the house, back of the house, they receive that. If anybody leaves tips, normally it goes direct to the front of the house, but that's in addition to having a solid wage that they're receiving.
So
But
that takes care of two things. Everybody has a fair wage, and the
Right.
second part is you get to maintain your staff.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a solid wage to pay for anyone. You know, it's our back of the house wages vary a little bit, but I think for the most part, and I can't speak for everyone that does events, but I think it does help for, well, one, the fact that we're self-owned. You know, it's my wife and I that own it, and we're lucky enough that we're able to see these numbers on paper before we even open the doors. Like, we know, you know, there's 100 people coming through. This is how much they paid. This is how much I need this is how much staff I need. This is how much I'm going to pay them. So I have a solid number that I can move forward in to say, listen, this is what I can afford to pay and still remain profitable. But it's when you have a restaurant that's, you know, that opens up and sometimes it's not busy and sometimes it rains and you're empty, like those variables really affect your bottom line tremendously. And obviously, if you're a restaurant owner, as much as you're very empathetic to your staff and you want to make sure that they make a living wage, having had a restaurant that I closed during the pandemic and we tried to keep staff on board and we tried to pay them. If you don't have a business, you can't help anyone. You know, it's kind of like putting the mask on yourself before you help anybody else. But it was like that. We're lucky enough in our business that we're able to pay a living wage up front. So we'll continue to do that.
You know, I just see that Peter Herrero has come into the program. Peter, I'm going to put you out here because you and I had a very long conversation on this topic, and I think you came up with a good solution. I don't know if it can be implemented, but you seem to be able to maintain a staff that actually works.
I'm going to stutter there for a little bit and say it's working. I don't know if I can maintain this going forward. Do I think it's unfair? I apologize. I have a 60-pound lap dog, and I haven't been home because the air conditioning in the office doesn't work, so she can't come to work with me. But we do a couple things. A lot of our business in the restaurant is parties. So we divide, the customers have no problem paying a 20, 21, 22% service charge. It is, I believe, 14 size font on our contracts. The customer knows it, but it is divided 2% for the culinary staff, 2% for the salesperson, and the front of the house staff gets 17%. But the per person average for our events is usually about 50% higher. It's an organized event. So believe it or not, they're not salespeople, they're service people, they're coordinators. The kitchen gets about $50 to $60, and they decided to make it even amongst the 6 kitchen members that are on for that shift. That 2% that they get from all the parties in the restaurant. The client doesn't have a problem with it. We've explained it to the staff that you're not taking orders. You're literally timing the party because it's a preset menu. So the staff, the front of the house staff, excuse me, moved begrudgingly forward on it, but we were very upfront. I said, I understand. You don't feel it's fair. And I still hear grumbling from time to time. You don't have to do parties. We'll keep you in the a la carte side of the business. And then they realized they're still making 40% more by doing parties on that shift. We've also found that the clients have no problems paying a 3% convenience fee for credit cards. There's a bunch of things that are going on. We have a real upfront conversation. We have family meal, but we highly respect our kitchen. And what I mean by family meal, I mean, everybody knows family meal, but I asked the kitchen staff, has the front of the house brought you water, lemonade, iced tea, Arnold Palmer's? Every hour, everybody's assigned. If they forget, the front of the house waiter is warned. The second time, it's explained. If you don't want to take care of the kitchen staff with their beverages, I get it. No problem at all. But they don't have to cook your dinner now. Because this is not mutual respect. I have done it, by the way. And then they say, well, that's my right. No. It's not your right and it's not your privilege. It's a benefit that you earn by being in good standing with the company. You can go next door to the deli and get your own dinner. So it comes from when I get a cup of coffee with the kitchen staff, I know what they all drink. The money issue is going to be a real difficult one. I agree with everyone on the line. We really have to pay the back of the house more. But the problem is with tipping and everything else is it's the way our tax structure is. So it's difficult. It's even difficult on the operator who now has to pay payroll taxes on gratuities and things that are on the check. I hope that helped.
Oh, it always does. Bob, why don't you jump in here? I know you have strong opinions on the subject.
Well, I come from the civilian perspective, and when I look at the restaurant industry, it's kind of like every other company or every other business in our economy. Our economy and our is built on maximum profit by the companies, which means having as much of the overhead under control as possible. And going back, and Russell, I love what you said in the beginning, going back to the early days, look, we built this economy in this country on unfortunately, slave labor and cheap labor throughout history. The restaurants never got out of that. You talk to any restaurant owner candidly, and they will say, not all of them, but a lot of them will say that, actually paying a good wage they're not able to pay a good wage. They're not able to come up with the right kind of money to pay people without making tips necessary. In other words, they're not.
Bob, hold on one second.
Running efficient
Bob,
businesses.
Bob, hold on one second. But one of the things again that's missing is these jobs, especially on the fast food side, were not meant to become career jobs. They were meant to be steps to ongoing jobs and the building of a career. So somehow these jobs turned into something else.
Right.
Well,
But-
Fred, I have to disagree with you there. I
Okay.
think that those that status was perhaps earned by the workers, but certainly assigned to them by the business owners. And I think that here's my question. Why is the restaurant industry, the food industry, different than every other industry? We don't have to tip the FedEx workers and the UPS workers for dropping the packages at our house. We're not responsible for UPS's overhead, yet we're responsible for as a civilian, responsible for restaurant owners' overhead. I don't get it.
That's
And
fair.
I think
It comes back to keeping prices low.
yeah, it's back to the cheap expectations that Larry and other people have said, unless we can deliver food to people at actual Walmart prices, we're going to go out of business. And that's, the Walmart economy just
And that's,
Doesn't
and
work.
those days are over.
Yeah.
Those days are over, you know. it's like-
And look, as a civilian, a lot of us tip for two reasons. One, because it's customary. Two, because we know those people are not getting paid a lot of money and they depend on us to pay the restaurant owner's overhead.
Mhm.
And I guess the third reason is there's a little bit of mistrust. If I leave a tip, 20%, whatever tip for somebody, I'm not sure who's actually getting that tip. Did the bus staff get it? To Peter Herrera's point, do the people in the back of the house get it? It's a whole bunch of weird stuff going on. That's my opinion.
Well,
And you know what? Back to my original question, why is the food industry different than every other industry? Political, I suppose, but
that's very much the case, and it shouldn't be. In all honesty, and again, this isn't a new conversation. This is a very old conversation, and it's certainly become a bigger conversation over the last three to 4 years. Danny Meyer, David Chang, many restaurateurs here in New York said, we're doing away with tipping. We're just going to charge you the price. You look at the menu, that's the price it costs you, right? And we will pay our staff a living wage. And they tried it. And there was obviously pushback from both sides, not just from traditionalized waiters and again, New York is sort of a special thing because again, like we tip our mailman. We tip the FedEx guy at Christmas.
yeah, for Christmas, but
but you don't do that. You don't do that in the Midwest. You don't do it in California. But the thought and the thing that you have to the thought and the thing that you have to deal with is again back to its core that it costs more. It has to be. We have to be given the latitude and the ability to be able to run our businesses from a good business model, which means that we shouldn't be double taxed on things like service charges or gratuities. We shouldn't be double taxed on so many of the elements of what we need to do for our businesses. There's more red tape. Like the amount of money, if you built anything in the last few years, the amount of money that you have to hand out before you even open your door to the city and the city officials and it's ad nauseum how much money you're constantly paying out. And, lots of those businesses, and especially some of these large corporates like Walmart and stuff like that, the kind of tax incentives and tax breaks they get to build their massive things. One of the major issues that San Francisco is having right now is the fact that they let tech into the city. And all of those massive, enormous installments, let's just take the Bird for one example. It took up several city blocks. It takes up several city blocks within the center of Market Street in San Francisco. First off, he ain't paying the rent for it. B, they basically got the building for free. They didn't have to pay, they cut a deal so that they didn't have to pay employment taxes. But guess what? The little tiny restaurant on the corner that was praying to be able to felt that it was fortunate enough to be on the same block as that monster, to have some offshoot of those people coming through and dining. And, again, the whole idea was it's going to bring 100,000 people in and all these business people with all this high net worth into the city to eat at our restaurants and shop at our stores and stay in our buildings and hotels and everything else. And guess what? They don't. They made the facility itself. They go in, they don't have to leave. So they don't spend any money in the economy. They don't live within the city. They all split. So all that money that we allowed them to not pay doesn't go in the city coffers. So what does the city do? They tighten down on the restaurants because they know that the restaurants are a cash register. And and it's the same thing here. It's the same thing here. None of my staff lives, as much as I want to have local workers, none of my staff can afford to live in the neighborhood. They have to live in outer boroughs and travel an hour into work every day in a crappy subway that doesn't run on time because they don't do the right thing to run that city service that we pay so much taxes for, billions upon billions of dollars. So again, there's legislative things that have to be fixed, but there's also, and we were talking about this offline, there's a massive re-education that has to take place. You go to the grocery store, you pay for eggs, you pay for milk, you pay for meat, you pay for pork, you see what all those prices are like.
Right, so who has to be educated, the consumer or the business owners?
Both, in large respect. Business owners need to be given the tools and the ability to be able to be brave enough to make the changes to their business model to survive, to thrive.
So what are those changes?
To thrive.
What are those changes that you want to see?
Well, again, I'd like to see some legislative changes by allowing business owners to make better decisions and more equitable decisions on how they do the distribution of wealth within their business. That they're not taxed down into the single digits, so that the next thing that comes along doesn't close us all in 2 weeks, or destroy our businesses after 20 years. Within a hot minute. I would like to see customers informed and understand that the principle behind this weird, who knows where it came from, idea of have it your way, fast and easy and cheap is over. That, again, we're an art house, and I get that we're different than the greater majority of restaurants, and that there are restaurants across the spectrum, and you have choice. You have choice. You don't have to eat at my restaurant. You can go to the neighborhood joint that serves conventional product from US foods or low-level sources. You can go to them and pay sadly now, half the price for that meal, and have a kid that has only been in the kitchen for a year cook it for you. Or you can come and pay the real a slightly more realistic price, because I don't charge enough, and I'm on the top of the spectrum here in Harlem, and I don't charge enough. I would have to charge 40 to 50% more to get into the realistic number of what it costs to run my restaurant. But again, I make a choice. I have to make a choice as a business owner, but I also breathe reality into people, of this is, of all of the adages, you can have it high quality and you can have it my way, or you can take the highway. It's like, and again, I think people are starting to realize that going to the cheap, inexpensive fast food is not necessarily the thing that's going to keep them alive.
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you. I'm sorry I have to stop you, Russell. Well, maybe we'll do just a show on you, but because there's plenty that you have to say and it's appreciated. But as I always say at this time of the show, time is always our enemy. And it is that time that we go around the room to give, final thoughts on what we see and what we've spoken about. So, Peter, as the person that all these people that have spoken are doing everything for you and Bob, what do you have to say? What did you hear that affected you?
I'm kind of frustrated, to tell you the truth. I don't see a solution, and I view it all as a political issue. And that's I don't have much hope for any resolution there, and a lot has been said about that. If anything, I'm going to make, because of what Russell talked about, I'm going to start making when I do go out to eat, make a concerted effort to go to those restaurants that support a living wage, and through his website, and I was able to see that. But it's a big concern, and there are a lot of big issues. I know Fred, essentially talked about automation and the loss of jobs that are coming up in the years ahead. So I thought it was great, though. It was a really wonderful food for thought and an intellectual conversation.
Thank you, Peter. Bob?
Well, I agree with Peter. I think it's political. I also think it's systemic, and those are hard things to change. Nothing anybody has said here is a surprise to me, and I don't think there's one easy solution. I do think that from a personal perspective, I would love to see restaurant owners run their restaurants like business people that are responsible for their own overhead and can figure out how to make a profit. I know there's market limitations on what they can charge, as Russell was just talking about, but no easy solution, that's for sure. And until then, Peter and I are just going to keep tipping like we normally do, I suppose.
Okay. Yvonne?
I mean, I second that. I echo the same sentiment. I think everybody is trying to do the right thing. When you look at it from a business perspective, it does help to say, and it helps to have the ability to pay people less. Is it the right thing? Absolutely not. Do we want the opportunity to be able to distribute tips according to what we can negotiate internally with our staff and back of the house, front of the house? Sure. But are there assholes restaurant owners that are also going to take that and not distribute as much as they can? Probably. I think we're the outliers as far as the people that are trying to make or enact this change in a positive way. Should everybody deserve to make a living wage? Absolutely. Is that possible? Of course, but I don't have the answer. I don't. We're just blessed that we have the ability to do it.
It's a problem. What you just said needs thought and the will to do. And everybody is we all complain, but we're all in a groove. And to get out of that groove, it's going to take something. Peter Herrero, final thought.
I truly appreciate everybody's perspective. I think we have to keep the conversation going. There are little things that we can all do to make our staff's lives better. And there's a bunch of things that we have to keep sharing. But I do believe it's a systemic issue. People want to be able to reward good service. And we've all been to a restaurant where it's average service, and we've all been to a restaurant. I tipped the other night $10 at a Wendy's. That young man at the drive-thru was phenomenal. He made my night. Yes, I gave him my business card and then asked him if he wanted to go into the hospitality business. He couldn't believe I tipped him $10.
It's awesome.
It was worth it. He made my friggin' night.
It's awesome. Love it.
So I gotta tell you, I think it's very hard for all of us. And you are right, by the way, that we are the outliers. So, I think we all have to figure it out on our own. I hate to say it. We need legislation, but if we can't get real immigration passed, tipping, and it's not happening, ladies and gentlemen, we're not on the agenda. And let's be honest, we never thought hospitality would be the business industry 40 years ago. No one thought we'd be. I'm in hospitals, and I actually do better in the hospital than I do in the restaurant because people love hospitality, but no one wants to pay for it. That's our job, to figure out how to pay for it.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Russell.
I've said a lot and always too much, but the thing that I would, again, everybody I think knows where I'm at with all of this, just through my actions. I certainly, I may not talk about it a lot sometimes, but I take action every day about it. The thing that I would recommend to people, if you want to see change, that it has to start with each one of us, and it goes beyond just, and I'm tipping people. That we have to attack the core issues, and it starts with a lot of your Congress people, your senators have websites that you can send a message to them, find out who it is, Google it, find out who's in your area, who represents you, and email or send a message to your representative to say, please support the bills that IRC and One Fair Wage both have on dockets right now. New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Ohio, California, all of these places have bills that are in process, and IRC has a national bill to help resolve the tax issue. So get behind them, even if you have to go to the NRA. Support some of these people, because they're actually trying to make a difference for us.
By the way, that's the National Restaurant Association.
Yeah.
Not the
Don't go to
rifle
the other
association.
NRA to get
Yeah.
get the
They're
bill passed.
so close in actuality, like they're pretty right there together. So
For what it's worth, if the rifle association got behind this, it'll definitely pass. So maybe he's onto something here.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
I want to go back to the discussion that Bob and I were having, and I think it's important to distinguish between what the service is in a restaurant and somebody delivering a package is. I think it's an important issue, and I think that an operator needs to decide, what business am I in? If I'm in hospitality, then yes, I need to participate in the compensation of my staff that's in front of my customer. But I also think that realistically, tipping is going to remain a part of what we do. And I think it's very different than having a package delivered to your doorstep, et cetera. No more than you would tip a dental hygienist. Or at what point do you draw a line? And I think the other thing is, I think we're all deluding ourselves. I go back to my toll booth worker. I think we are deluding ourselves and and not being fair to ourselves and the future of our businesses if we don't look at how to embrace technology, whether it's a sous vide application immediately, or whether it's a use of an outside tech vendor to handle reservations that were typically handled by a maitre d' before, et cetera. I think you've got to look at what tech can do.
Okay, thank you. What fantastic show, folks. I really appreciate the time and effort you spent. And I just want to say one thing about this conversation. What we really, as food service professionals and as restaurateurs, we have to define in our heads what hospitality is. For Russell, it is turning out incredibly high quality product at a too low price for what he's turning out. And it's a SEAL team of professionals working for him. For Peter Herrero, it is making everyone in the restaurant feel welcome, like they're at home. For Stratus Morfogan at the Brooklyn Dumpling Shop, who has a different mindset, and the people that go there have a different mindset. It's how fast you can get in and get out without having to talk to anybody. And that's his idea of hospitality. If you're going to the right market, it all fits. So we have to decide what hospitality is in our heads. And as a consumer, visit places that match that. Don't visit a pig's ear and expect a silk purse. And that's, and I'm not saying that to be, derogatory to the pig's ear. I have eaten in some great pig's ears, but I don't expect the waitress to, speak the specials, and describe each piece. So we have to reset expectations. A, there's no more cheap meals. It doesn't exist. B, what we saw in 2018 will never come back again. So we have to make the best of what we have. And I think the people in our panel are doing that. And yeah, fair wage, but how do we present it and how do we change over to it without making everybody feel that each individual has to reach into their pocket deeper to support somebody else's business? I mean, that's the task. And hopefully we're up for it. And, well, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and I hope you come back and see us. We will welcome you and just take a look at Eventbrite for our invitations, and we will be publicizing this on LinkedIn. And well, until then, everybody stay positive,
You too. Thank
test
you.
negative, and go to your local restaurant.
Happy summertime.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.